The stars had never been kind to the Valkyrie. Commander Isera Velthon stood alone on the bridge of her ship, the last resonance. She looked out at the endless darkness of space through the cracked viewing window. Behind her, the soft hum of dying engines filled the silence. The ship was old. The ship was tired. Just like her people, the Valkyrie were tall beings with skin that glowed like soft moonlight. Their bones were made of crystal, and when they spoke, their voices sounded like music. Once, long ago, they had been a proud species with a beautiful homeworld. They had cities that touched the clouds and songs that echoed across mountains, but that was 300 years ago. Before the judgment, Isera closed her eyes and remembered the stories her grandmother had told her. The Galactic Concord was a powerful group of 4,000 alien species. They controlled most of the known universe. They made the rules. They decided who was worthy of living among the stars and who was not. The Valkyrie had been judged unworthy. It was because of the mutation. Once every few generations, a Valkyrie child would be born different. These children could create powerful bursts of mental energy. They could not control it. When they felt strong emotions, the energy would explode outward like a wave. It could break things. It could hurt people. The Concord called it dangerous. They called the Valkyrie a threat to galactic peace. They did not care that the mutation was rare. They did not care that most Valkyrie lived normal, peaceful lives. The Concord did not believe in taking chances. So they took everything. They burned the Valkyrie homeworld. They destroyed their cities. They marked every Valkyrie ship with a special signal that warned other species to stay away. They called it the exile signal. It was a sound that meant death and disease and danger. It was a lie, but no one questioned the Concord. For 300 years, the Valkyrie wandered through space. They could not land on any planet. They could not trade with any species. They survived by mining asteroids and drinking recycled water. They watched their children grow up never knowing what grass felt like under their feet. Isera had been born on a ship. She had lived her whole life on ships. She was 140 years old now, and she had never seen a sunrise. The door behind her opened with a soft hiss. Her second in command, a young male named Torath, walked in slowly. His glow was dim. That meant he was worried. "Commander," he said quietly, "the food synthesizers have failed on 3 more ships. The medicine supplies are almost gone. We have maybe 2 months before." He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Isera nodded slowly. She had known this day was coming. The Valkyrie remnant fleet was all that remained of her species. 12 ships. 40,000 people. That was it. That was everyone. And they were dying. "There is something else," Torath said. He pulled up a holographic map of the nearby star systems. "Our scouts have found a planet. It is on the edge of Concord space. The species there is young. They have only been traveling in space for a short time. They are not part of the Concord yet." Isera looked at the map. A small yellow star. A blue and green planet. It looked peaceful. It looked alive. "What are they called?" she asked. "Humans," Torath replied. "They call themselves humans." Isera studied the planet for a long moment. She knew what would happen if they went there. The Concord would have already sent warnings. The humans would know about the exile signal. They would know what the Valkyrie were supposed to be. Monsters. Dangers. Mistakes of nature. Every species they had ever approached had turned them away. Some had fired weapons at them. Some had simply ignored their cries for help. The universe had made its opinion of the Valkyrie very clear. But what choice did they have? "How long until we reach this planet?" Isera asked. 6 days at our current speed, Torath answered. Isera turned back to the viewing window. Somewhere out there, 40,000 of her people were waiting for her to save them. Mothers were holding hungry children. Elders were dying without medicine. Young ones were losing hope. She thought about her own daughter, Mevin, who was only 20 years old. Mevin had never known anything but running. Never known anything but fear. What kind of life was that? Set a course, Ysera said firmly. We go to Earth. Torath hesitated. Commander, if they reject us like the others, then we will die, Ysera said simply. But we will die having tried. We will die reaching for something, instead of fading away in the darkness. She turned to face him, and for a moment, her glow brightened. I would rather be destroyed reaching for hope than survive another year with none. Torath stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded and left to give the orders. Ysera stayed on the bridge alone. She watched as the stars slowly shifted around them. The fleet was moving. 12 broken ships carrying the last of a forgotten people, limping toward a tiny blue world that probably did not want them. She thought about all the species who had turned them away. She thought about all the time she had begged for help and received only silence. She thought about her grandmother, who had died still dreaming of solid ground beneath her feet. The universe was vast and cold, and did not care about the Valkyrie. The Concord had made sure of that. But maybe these humans would be different. It was a foolish hope. Ysera knew that. After 300 years of exile, after generations of rejection, hope was a luxury her people could not afford. Hope was for species who had futures. Species who mattered. And yet, as she watched Earth's sun grow slowly brighter in the distance, Ysera allowed herself to feel something she had not felt in decades. Just a small spark. Just a tiny flame in the darkness of her heart. Maybe, just maybe, someone out there would look at the Valkyrie and see something other than monsters. Maybe someone would see people. She did not pray. The Valkyrie had stopped praying long ago. But she closed her eyes and made a wish on the distant yellow star. Please, she thought. Please let them be kind. The last resonance flew on through the void, carrying its cargo of broken dreams toward an uncertain future. Behind it, 11 other ships followed, their engines struggling, their lights flickering, their people hoping against hope that they had been cast out by the cosmos. But they were not ready to give up yet. The alarms started screaming at 3 in the morning. Captain James Rivera was drinking coffee in the control room of the Jupiter Early Warning Station when every screen turned red. His cup fell from his hand and shattered on the floor. He did not notice. 12 ships had just appeared near Jupiter. 12 massive alien vessels, scarred and damaged, moving slowly toward Earth, and they were broadcasting a signal that made Rivera's blood run cold. The exile signal. 3 years ago, the Galactic Concord had made first contact with humanity. They had given Earth many gifts. Faster ships, better medicine, knowledge of the universe. But they had also given warnings. Many, many warnings. The exile signal meant danger. It meant stay away. It meant that whatever species was broadcasting, it had been judged unfit for civilization. The Concord had been very clear about what to do if humanity ever detected this signal. Do not engage. Do not welcome. Do not shelter. Rivera immediately sent a message to Earth. Within an hour, the entire planet knew that exiles were coming. In the United Nations Space Command building, Secretary General Amara Okonkwo was pulled from her bed. She arrived at the emergency meeting still wearing her robe, her gray hair uncombed. Around her sat generals, diplomats, scientists, and one alien. The Concord ambassador was a creature called Skittle. He looked like a giant insect with sharp claws and clicking mandibles. He had lived on Earth for 2 years, teaching humans about galactic politics. Right now, he was very agitated. You must destroy them, Skittle said, his voice like grinding metal, or turn them away. The Valkyrie are dangerous. The Concord judged them 300 years ago. They carry a mutation that creates uncontrollable psychic explosions. They are a threat to every world they touch. General Morrison, a large man with a red face, nodded quickly. We should listen to the ambassador. We cannot risk angering the Concord. They are the most powerful force in the galaxy. What exactly did these Valkyrie do? Okonkwo asked quietly. Ski Tal hesitated. They carry a genetic flaw. Some of their children are born with dangerous abilities. They cannot control these abilities. The risk is too great. Some of their children? Okonkwo repeated. How many? Perhaps 1 in every 1,000. Perhaps less. But even 1 is too many. The Concord does not tolerate risk. Okonkwo leaned back in her chair. She was 63 years old. She had spent her entire life fighting for refugees, for the forgotten, for those that powerful nations had decided did not matter. She had seen what happened when fear replaced compassion. Play the message they sent us, she said. A technician pressed a button. A hologram appeared above the table. It showed an alien woman with glowing skin and a face that looked exhausted beyond words. She spoke slowly, and a computer translated her words into English. We are the Valkyrie. We carry no weapons that can harm your world. We carry only the sick, the old, and the young. We have been wandering for 300 years. Our ships are failing. Our children are starving. We ask for nothing but a place to die with dignity. If you cannot offer sanctuary, we ask only for enough fuel to leave your space. We will not blame you. The cosmos has already taught us what we are worth. The room was silent. Okonkwo looked at the faces around her. She saw fear. She saw calculation. She saw people already preparing to say no. She thought about her grandmother, who had walked across a desert to escape a civil war. She thought about the boats full of refugees that were turned away from shore after shore. She thought about the long, ugly history of humanity, deciding that some people were not worth saving. How many are on those ships? She asked. 40,000, a technician answered. 12,000 of them are children. 12,000 children, Okonkwo thought, floating in darkness. Waiting to see if strangers would be kind, she stood up. Madam Secretary, we must be careful, General Morrison warned. The Concord judged an entire species as unworthy because of something that might happen. Okonkwo interrupted. Because a few children might be born different. Because of a risk that might never come. She shook her head. Humanity has done terrible things for the same reasons. We have learned painfully that this kind of thinking leads to darkness. You cannot defy the Concord, Skittle said angrily. I am not defying anyone, Okonkwo replied calmly. I am making a choice about who we want to be. She looked at the hologram of the alien commander, frozen in her desperate plea. Open a channel to the Valkyrie fleet. The room erupted in protests. Generals shouted about military readiness. Diplomats warned about political consequences. Skittle clicked his mandibles so fast it sounded like a machine gun. Okonkwo ignored them all. The channel opened. She saw the alien commander in real time now. The woman's glow was dim. Her eyes were tired. She looked like someone who had already accepted death. Vessel last resonance, Okonkwo said. This is Earth. You are cleared to enter orbit. On the screen, the alien commander froze. We are sending medical ships to meet you, Okonkwo continued. We have food. We have medicine. We have fuel. She paused and let her voice soften. We have room. The alien commander stared at the screen. For a long moment, she did not move. Then, slowly tears began to fall from her crystalline eyes. Her glow, which had been so dim, began to brighten until she shone like a small star. Why? She whispered. You do not know us. You owe us nothing. The Concord has told you we are monsters. Why would you help us?" Okonkwo smiled gently. "Because someone has to. Because you asked. Because your children deserve to know what grass feels like." She glanced at Skittle, then back at the screen. "And because we refuse to believe that fear is the only answer." The alien commander is Sarah. Her name was pressed her hand against her chest. It was a Valkyrie gesture of deep gratitude. "We have been running for so long," Ysera said, her voice breaking. "We have forgotten that kindness existed." "Then let us remind you," Okonkwo replied. Around her, the room had gone quiet. Even General Morrison had stopped protesting. There was something in the air. Something that felt like the universe shifting just a little towards something better. Ski Tyal stared at Okonkwo with something that might have been confusion or anger or fear. Perhaps all three. "You will regret this," he said quietly. Okonkwo looked at him steadily. "Maybe, but I would regret turning them away more." She ended the transmission with the Valkyrie and turned to her staff. "Contact every nation on Earth. Tell them we have guests coming. Tell them we need to be ready." She straightened her robe and walked toward the door. "We have a lot of work to do." Behind her, on a dozen screens, the Valkyrie fleet began its slow journey toward Earth, toward hope, toward the first home they had known in 300 years. The universe had been cold to them, but humanity chose to be warm. The Valkyrie called their new home Veltarum. It meant the place where we stopped running. The settlement was built in the far north, where Canada and Russia met the Arctic. The Valkyrie liked cold weather. Their crystalline bones worked better in low temperatures, and their glowing skin seemed brighter against the snow. Within a year, they had built small villages across the frozen land. Within 2 years, the villages had grown into towns, for the first time in 300 years. Valkyrie children played outside under open skies. Commander Ysera watched them from a hill overlooking the main settlement. 2 young girls were making snow angels, their laughter mixing with the howling wind. A group of boys were trying to build a snow fort, though they kept collapsing it by accident. They did not know how snow worked. They were learning. Beside her stood Dr. Sarah Miller, a human doctor who had volunteered to help the Valkyrie. She was a small woman with kind eyes and hair that was always messy. "They're so happy," Sarah said softly. "They have never seen snow before," Sarah replied. "They have never seen anything before. Just metal walls and recycled air." She paused. "This is a miracle to them." The first year had not been easy. Not everyone on Earth was happy about the Valkyrie. Protest groups formed in many countries. They called themselves Earth First and carried signs that said things like, "Aliens go home" and "Humanity for humans." Politicians gave angry speeches about protecting Earth's resources. News programs debated whether the Valkyrie were really safe. But for every protester, there were 10 volunteers. Humans came from all over the world to help. They brought food and medicine and building materials. They taught the Valkyrie how to farm in cold weather. They learned Valkyrie songs and tried to sing along, even though human throats could not make the right sounds. Slowly, the 2 species began to understand each other. Then winter came, and everything changed. It was a night in December. A young Valkyrie girl named Lyrith was sleeping in her family's small house. She was 12 years old, with skin that glowed pale blue and eyes like diamonds. She was kind and quiet and loved to draw pictures of the stars. That night, she had a nightmare. In her dream, she was back on the ships. The walls were closing in. There was no air. She could hear her mother screaming. She could feel the cold of space pressing against the hull. She was dying. They were all dying. Lyrith woke up screaming, and when she screamed, something terrible happened. A wave of pure mental energy exploded out of her body. It was invisible but powerful. Every window within 100 meters shattered instantly. Walls cracked. Furniture flew across rooms. 3 humans who were walking outside were thrown to the ground, cut by flying glass. The resonance surge, the mutation that the Concorde had feared. The reason the Valkyrie had been exiled. It had finally appeared on Earth. By morning, the news had spread everywhere. Videos of the destruction played on every screen. The Concorde ambassador Skittle appeared on television with a look of grim satisfaction. "We warned you," he said. "The Valkyrie cannot control their own minds. Will you wait until one of them destroys a city? Will you wait until your children are dead before you admit we were right?" Fear spread through the human population like a disease. The protests grew larger. Politicians demanded action. Even some of the volunteers stopped coming. In Veltarum, Isera gathered her people. They stood in silence, their glows dim with shame and fear. They knew what was coming. They had seen it before. First came the fear. Then came the polite request to leave. Then came the violence. "We should prepare the ships," she said quietly. "We should leave before they make us." Her daughter Mavin grabbed her arm. "No, Mother. We cannot run again. We cannot keep running forever. What choice do we have?" Isera asked bitterly. "It always ends the same way. It will always end the same way." But then something unexpected happened. 3 days after the incident, a press conference was held in the main square of Veltarum. A human doctor named David Chen stood in front of the cameras. He was the one who had treated the injured humans after the surge. Beside him stood Lyrith, the young girl who had caused the accident. She was trembling with fear and shame. She kept her head down and would not look at the cameras. 3 people were hurt in this incident, Dr. Chen said calmly. 2 of them needed stitches. 1 had a concussion. All 3 are recovering well. I have seen worse injuries from car accidents. He paused. I have seen worse injuries from football games. The reporters started shouting questions. Dr. Chen held up his hand. This child is not a weapon, he continued, pointing at Lyrith. She is a scared little girl who had a nightmare about watching her people die. A nightmare that she has because the galaxy spent 300 years treating her species like garbage. His voice grew harder. If we throw 40,000 people back into space because of this, then we do not deserve to call ourselves human. Lyrith looked up at him. Her eyes were wet with tears. Dr. Chen put his hand gently on her shoulder. We are humans, he said to the cameras. We solve problems. That is what we do. We do not throw away people because they are difficult. We find answers. The speech did not change everything overnight. Some people still protested. Some politicians still gave angry speeches. But the mood began to shift. Over the next 2 years, human and Valkyrie scientists worked together. They studied the mutation. They learned how it worked. And finally, they created a solution. They called them dampeners. Small devices that could detect a resonance surge before it happened and safely absorb the energy. Every Valkyrie child with the mutation was given one. Every home in Veltarum had them installed. The surges did not stop. But they stopped causing damage. On the day the last dampener was installed, Isera stood in the main square of Veltarum. Around her, thousands of her people had gathered. Humans stood among them. The 2 species had become mixed together in a way that seemed natural now. Secretary General Okonko was there too. She was older now, her hair completely white. But her eyes were still sharp and kind. We did not expect this, Isera said to her. We did not expect you to fight for us. Okonkwo smiled. We did not expect you to be worth fighting for. But you are. She looked out at the crowd, at the glowing Valkyrie and the bundled-up humans, all standing together in the cold. You are family now. Isera felt something warm spread through her chest. It was a strange feeling. It took her a moment to recognize it. It was belonging. For the first time in 3 centuries, the Valkyrie were not running. They were home. 5 years passed. The Valkyrie became part of Earth. Their children went to human schools. Their doctors worked in human hospitals. Their musicians played their crystal songs at human festivals. It was not perfect. There were still problems, still arguments, still people on both sides who did not trust each other. But it was working. Then the Concorde came back. Captain Rivera was the first to see them. He was still working at the Jupiter station, older now, with gray in his hair. When the alarm started screaming, he felt a cold fear settle in his stomach. 50 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. They were massive things, each one larger than a mountain. They moved in perfect formation, like a fist closing around the sun. Their weapon systems were active. Their shields were raised. The Galactic Concorde had sent a war fleet. In the United Nations chamber, Secretary General Okonkwo watched the holographic display with a calm face. Inside, her heart was pounding. She had always known this day might come. She had hoped it would not. The hologram shifted, and a figure appeared before the assembly. It was a Concorde official called High Arbiter Thiessen. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and cold eyes. He was very, very old, and he spoke with the certainty of someone who had never been questioned in his life. "Humanity," Thiessen said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You have violated Concorde Directive 7 Omega. You have sheltered a marked species. You have shared technology with exiles. You have defied the judgment of 4,000 civilizations." Okonkwo said nothing. She waited. "You have 1 solar cycle to surrender the Valkyrie to Concorde custody for processing," Thiessen continued. "Failure to comply will result in humanity's own marking. Your trade agreements will end. Your colonies will be isolated. You will be cast out, as the Valkyrie were. You will be alone." The chamber erupted in chaos. Diplomats shouted at each other. Generals demanded to know their military options. Scientists calculated how long Earth could survive without Concorde trade. The math was simple. Humanity could not win a war against the Concorde. Their 50 ships could destroy everything humanity had built in space. Their technology was centuries ahead. Fighting was not an option. "What does processing mean?" Okonkwo asked quietly. Thiessen paused. "The Valkyrie will be taken to secure facilities. They will be examined. Their genetic material will be studied. Steps will be taken to ensure their mutation cannot spread." "You mean you will kill them?" "I mean they will be processed." Okonkwo nodded slowly. She had expected this. The Concorde used soft words to hide hard truths. Processing meant death. Processing meant genocide. Processing meant taking 40,000 people, including 12,000 children, and erasing them from existence. She thought about Isera, who had become her friend over the past 5 years. She thought about little Lirith, who was 17 now and studying to be an artist. She thought about the Valkyrie babies who had been born on Earth, who had never known anything but blue skies and snow and kindness. "I need to consult with my people," Okonkwo said. "We will give our answer soon." Thiessen's image flickered. "You have 1 solar cycle. Use it wisely." The hologram disappeared. That night, Okonkwo traveled to Voltarum. She found Isera standing in the main square, surrounded by her people. They already knew. News traveled fast. Their glows were dim with fear. "We will surrender," Isera said before Okonkwo could speak. "We will not let humanity be destroyed for our sake." "No," Okonkwo said firmly. "You must be reasonable," Isera replied. "The Concorde will crush you. Your children will suffer because of us. We cannot allow that." Her voice broke slightly. "You have given us 5 years of peace. 5 years of sky and grass and hope. It is more than we ever dreamed of. Let us end this with dignity. Okonkwo stepped forward and took Asera's hands in her own. The commander's crystalline skin was cool against her warm human flesh. "Do you know what my grandmother told me when I was young?" Okonkwo asked. "She told me that evil wins when good people decide that fighting is too hard. She told me that every time we abandon someone to save ourselves, we lose a piece of what makes us human." She squeezed Asera's hands. "I am not willing to lose that piece. Not for trade. Not for safety. Not for anything. But the Concord is a bully," Okonkwo interrupted. "And bullies win because people are afraid to stand up to them. Well, I am standing up. Earth is standing up. And we are not giving you to anyone." Asera stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, her glow began to brighten. The next day, Okonkwo did something no human had ever done before. She flew a small diplomatic shuttle directly toward the Concord fleet. She positioned herself between the warships and Earth, and she opened a transmission on all frequencies, broadcasting to every species in the galaxy. "High Arbiter Thiessen," she said, her voice steady and clear. "You ask us to hand over 40,000 people to be killed. You call it processing. We have other words for it in our history. Genocide, ethnic cleansing, murder." She let the words hang in the silence. "We will not do it." Thiessen's face appeared on her screen. He looked annoyed. "Then you will be marked. You will be cast out. You will lose everything." Okonkwo smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Then mark us," she said. "Cast us out. Make us exiles." Her voice hardened. "But know this. Every species in your Concord is watching right now. They are watching you threaten to destroy a civilization for the crime of showing mercy. They are wondering if their children will be next. If they will be processed when you decide they are no longer useful." She leaned forward, her eyes burning with something that looked like fire. "Humanity will not be the last species you try to break," she said. "But we might be the first to make you regret it." She ended the transmission. For 3 days, the Concord fleet held position. The galaxy held its breath. On Earth, people gathered in the streets, looking up at the sky, waiting to see what would happen. In Veltarum, Asera watched the stars with her people. Their glows had brightened. They were not running. They were not hiding. For the first time in 300 years, someone was fighting for them. The universe had tried to crush them, but humanity had said no, and now everything was about to change. On the 4th day, something incredible happened. A single ship broke away from the Concord formation. It was a small transport vessel, barely armed, moving slowly toward Earth. The human defense fleet raised their weapons, ready to fire. But then the ship began broadcasting a message. "We are the Morthene. We stand with Earth. We stand with the Volcari." Another ship broke formation. Then another. Then a dozen more. The Morthene were an old species with wrinkled gray skin and sad eyes. Long ago, the Concord had decided that their elderly were a burden on galactic resources. They had forced the Morthene to kill anyone over a certain age. The Morthene had obeyed because they were afraid. They had been obeying for 2,000 years, but not anymore. More ships came. The Vrix, whose beautiful home planet had been taken away and given to a species the Concord liked better. The Hollow Ones, artificial beings who had been denied basic rights for 3,000 years, because the Concord said machines could not be people. The Khazari, whose religion had been banned because it taught that all life was equal. One by one, they crossed the line and took position beside Earth's small defense fleet, on the bridge of the Concord flagship. High Arbiter Thiessen watched with growing anger. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. Order them back into formation. Order them to obey. His officers tried. The ships did not respond. More vessels arrived. Not just from the fleet that had come to threaten Earth, but from all across Concord space. News of Okonkwo's speech had spread through the galaxy like fire. Species that had been silent for millennia were finally speaking. Species that had been afraid were finally fighting. They were not fighting with weapons. They were fighting with something more powerful. They were fighting with hope. In the end, nearly 300 ships stood between the Concord and Earth. It was still not enough to defeat Theson's war fleet in a straight battle. But it was enough to show that the Concord was no longer united. It was enough to show that the old rules were breaking. The final blow came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Skittle, the Concord representative who had lived on Earth for 7 years, appeared on the main communication channel. His insect face was unreadable, but his voice carried something that sounded almost like emotion. "Hi, Arbiter Theson," Skittle said. "I must speak." "Then speak." Theson growled. Tal was silent for a moment. Then he began. "When I first came to Earth, I thought the humans were foolish. I thought they were making a mistake by helping the Valkyrie. I told them so many times." He paused. "I was wrong." Theson's eyes narrowed. "Be careful, Ambassador." "I have been careful my whole life," Skittle replied. "We have all been careful. We have been so careful to follow the Concord's rules that we forgot why those rules existed. We were supposed to build a civilization of peace and cooperation. Instead, we built an empire of fear." His mandibles clicked softly. "The humans showed me something different. They showed me what it looks like when a species chooses compassion over safety, when they choose to help strangers instead of protect themselves." He turned to face Theson directly. "The humans have a saying that I did not understand for many years. They told it to me when I asked why they would risk everything for people they had never met. They said, 'What you do to the least of us, you do to all of us.'" His voice grew stronger. "I understand it now. When we cast out the Valkyrie, we damaged ourselves. When we let fear guide our decisions, we became smaller. The Concord has been shrinking for 10,000 years, and we never noticed." He gestured toward the ships that had gathered to defend Earth. "Look at them, Arbiter. Look at how many species came when someone finally stood up. They were waiting. They were all waiting for someone to be brave first." He lowered his head. "The humans were brave. And now we must choose. Do we continue to be afraid, or do we learn from them?" The channel was silent. Across the galaxy, billions of beings were watching. The Concord had ruled for 10,000 years through obedience and fear. No one had ever challenged them like this. The Sand's face was cold and hard. For a long moment, he said nothing. The entire universe seemed to hold its breath. Then, slowly, he gave the order to withdraw. The war fleet turned and began moving away from Earth. They did not fire a single shot. They did not make any threats. They simply left, disappearing into the darkness between stars. It was over. On Earth, people flooded into the streets, celebrating and crying and holding each other. In Valtarum, the Valkyrie sang. Their voices rose into the night sky, mixing with the northern lights, turning grief into joy and pain into hope. Commander Isera stood on a hill outside the main settlement, watching her people dance. Beside her stood Secretary General Okonkwo, wrapped in a thick coat against the cold. "Why?" Isera asked. It was the same question she had asked 5 years ago, when humanity first opened its doors. "Why did you do all of this? You could have been destroyed. You could have lost everything." Okonkwo was quiet for a moment. She watched the dancing Valkyrie, their glowing bodies moving like stars, come down to Earth. "My grandmother used to tell me stories," she said finally. "Stories about times when people chose fear. when they closed their doors and looked away from suffering. Those stories never had happy endings. She turned to face Asera. But she also told me stories about times when people chose love, when they stood up for strangers, when they decided that being good was more important than being safe. She smiled. Those stories always ended better. Asera's glow brightened until she shone like a beacon. You changed everything. Not just for us. For the whole galaxy. We just opened the door, Okonkwo replied. Everyone else chose to walk through it. Above them, the sky was full of ships from 100 different species. They were not fighting. They were not running. They were simply there, together, proving that the universe did not have to be cold. The Concord did not collapse that night. Change takes time. But something had shifted. Something had cracked. And through that crack, light was beginning to shine. Asera took Okonkwo's hand. Human warmth and Velkari crystal, holding each other under the stars. What happens now? Asera asked. Okonkwo looked up at the sky, at all those ships, at all those species who had finally found the courage to hope. Now we build something better, she said. Together. The northern lights danced overhead, painting the sky in colors that had no names. Below them, two species who had never met before 5 years ago stood side by side. Ready to face whatever came next on, the cosmos had cast out the Valkyrie, but humanity had welcomed them, and in doing so, they had changed everything. The universe was still vast. It was still dark, but it was no longer cold, because somewhere in a small corner of the galaxy, kindness had won. And that was only the beginning.